Our scripture this morning comes from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verses 14 to 15. These are words from King Solomon. There was a little city with a few people in it. A great king came against it and besieged it, building great siege works against it. Now there was found in it a poor, wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that poor man.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing our scripture with us today. Solomon ends this chapter in Ecclesiastes with a short story about a poor, wise man who saved a city that was under siege. The odds were against them. The population was meager and the enemy was formidable. You'd think the city would be grateful toward the wise man who saved them, but no. He got no parade, no key to the city, no street named after him, and in the words of Red Buttons, they never gave him a dinner. Solomon's story has a surprise ending. The man saved the city, but was forgotten. The man was ignored, and the city fell. Solomon's point? His point is wisdom is valuable, but it can be discarded, even by those who benefit from it. Think about that. Do we not ignore the source of all wisdom, God? Is not this short story a story about us? Christ being the poor wise man, God, of course, is the wisdom. We are the city under siege, and our formidable enemy is our own sinfulness and the powers of evil. We despise wisdom. We ignore it, and then wonder why we suffer. When People magazine presents its annual list of most admired people, how many are noted for their wisdom? None. The heroes of a society reveal much of the values of the people. In our celebrity-crazed culture, we honor those in the entertainment industry above all others. I can't think of another industry with more awards than this one. Movie stars and TV stars. When was the last time you read of someone from Kohler or Bemis or Johnsonville being honored at a red carpet award? If we do, we don't take the time to read about it. We don't read about it in the news because we are addicted to the glitz and the glamour and the fluff. The news itself is turning into infotainment. Like most news shows, it's become all dessert with very little meat and potatoes. And sadly, in many churches today, being entertained has become more important than prayer and learning the Bible. God's wisdom is so easily ignored, but the cost of doing so is incredibly high. The people Solomon is writing to in Ecclesiastes have given up on God. What do they believe in then? Well, nothing. And that makes sense because without God, nothing matters, and life is meaningless and purposefulness. With such a worldview, how can anyone be good when there is no such thing really then as good? Societies make rules to maintain order, but they can only use coercion to enforce the law if they cannot appeal to a higher absolute standard of morality. And that morality comes to us from one source, God. Solomon ends the chapter speaking in his true voice. In verse 18, he says, "A wise person can overcome the weapons of war, but one sinner can destroy much that is good." A wise person can overcome weapons of war, but one sinner can destroy much that is good. Words, friends, can heal. Words can wound. The underlying problems of our world have one source: sin. By rejecting God, rejecting wisdom, people do whatever they please, which often ends up destroying them and hurting others. Psychologist Larry Crabb observes, brokenness isn't so much about how bad you've been hurt, but how you sinned in handling how you've been hurt. Henry Nouwen writes, "Every well in the world, however refreshing, runs dry. Our souls thirst for the living water that springs from the throne of God." We cannot live with purpose if we lose hope. And we cannot have hope if we ignore or reject our source of wisdom. We choose the misery of our lives when we reject God, even in the smallest of ways. When we see life and live life from God's perspective through the life and the death of the poor wise man Christ, life begins to make sense, and the city is saved. Amen.